Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of 5 Minute Gaming News, the show that may or may not be 5 minutes. Today in the news, we're doing this again because apparently some people still need to hear it. Yesterday, the University of Houston posted another in the many studies that exist about video games and their effects on kids, this time by the National Science Foundation. And once again, despite what politicians say, new research findings challenge the fears parents have been hearing for years that children who spend hour after hour playing video games or choose games of certain genres would manifest unhealthy results in their cognitive ability. The team looked for association between the students' video game play and the performance on the standardized Cognitive Ability Test 7, known as COGAT, which evaluates verbal, quantitative, and non-verbal spatial skills. Overall, neither duration of play nor choice of video game genres had significant correlations with the COGAT measures. That result shows no direct linkage between video game playing and cognitive performance, despite what had been assumed, said May Jadala, professor in the School of Teaching and Learning at Illinois State University and studies principal investigator. But the study revealed something else of note as well that I think is very important: the fact that games are products that appear to be designed to help with the cognitive functions of kids, in the end, had no real impact either. If anything, all this does is show that for most people, video games are entertainment. They serve to entertain, and once we get that, we're like, all right, that felt pretty good, and we move on with our life, and we don't really focus or take much from the games back with us out into the real world. Sure, there are going to be people who do that, or people who are obsessed with games, or play too much, or forego their homework for Fortnite, but in the end, that's more of a parenting issue than a video games issue, and I'll leave it at that. In other news, look at this almost immediate update on the console wars! As you should know by now, but if you don't, I will catch you up. Microsoft, the biggest gaming company in the world by market cap, is trying to buy Activision Blizzard, the fifth biggest gaming company, and others like Sony are not too happy. So a fight's been brewing, and what was expected to be mostly an easy sale is now taking on a life of its own as regulators in the UK, EU, and US now appear concerned over the merits of such a deal. In the UK yesterday, the country's Competition and Markets Authority, CMA, announced in provisional findings that the deal would threaten competition in the gaming market, and even suggested that in order to get the merger approved, Activision Blizzard would need to sell off the Call of Duty part of its business first. Xbox and PlayStation compete closely with each other at present, and access to the most important content, like Call of Duty, is an important part of that competition, the CMA wrote in a press release. Reducing this competition between Microsoft and Sony could result in all gamers seeing higher prices, reduced range, lower quality, and worse service in gaming consoles over time. The CMA also said what we all kind of know, that business-wise, in a business sense, it makes perfect sense for Microsoft to make Call of Duty or Activision Blizzard games exclusives, or at least make them worse for all the other consoles that they're on. And offering deals like, oh, you can have it for the next 10 years, really doesn't do anything except to make groups like the CMA have to spend resources and time enforcing such a thing, and they don't want to do that. If anything, they suggest divestiture. What does that mean? Well, as Kotaku says, divestiture is a fancy word for sell-off, and CMA basically said its current preference would be for Microsoft to buy a piece of Activision Blizzard rather than the entire publisher, like the Candy Crush part or the World of Warcraft part, but definitely not the Call of Duty part. And so you're probably wondering, what, pray tell, was the Microsoft or Activision Blizzard response? Well, our dear old bag of shit Bobby Kotick was on CNBC and said this: if you're the UK and you have an incredibly educated workforce, you have a lot of technical talent, places like Cambridge where the best AI and machine learning is, I would think you would want to embrace a transaction like this, where you're going to see job creation and opportunity, and it isn't really at all whether it's Sony's or Microsoft's platform, it's really about the future of technology, and you know, they've said now for the last year, they would like to be the Silicon Valley of Europe, or of the continent, and if deals like this can't get through, they're not going to be Silicon Valley, they'll be Death Valley. What's amazing is he said all that knowing that Microsoft just laid off 10,000 employees and that any merger usually results in more layoffs. And What any of that has to do with the UK is beyond me, but I love the threat, Bobby. Love the threat, pal. Anyway, that is it for me, but I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of 5 Minute Gaming News.